This is a public service announcement. The views and events expressed here are totally fucked and are not necessarily the views of anyone. However, the events and suggestions are not to be taken lightly.
Au début, pour moi, je connaissais pas un petit peu... j'avais à apprendre encore les règles du jeu. Moi, mon modèle en politique, c'était mon père. Seulement, quand on regarde les grands premiers ministres du 20e siècle, les seuls qui ont vraiment tenu le coup, c'était des députés du Québec. C'était Trudeau, c'était Mulroney, c'était Chrétien, c'était Paul Martin.
Keeping in mind in front of us the European Union, how much is this partnership a first step towards continental integration? If so, how far would you like to go, and can you give us some sort of a roadmap and perhaps give us a distinction between partnership and integration?
Well, what we're really talking about here is not a big bang. We're talking about big progress.
What we're seeing is the beginning of a global government. The coordination that's underway now is going to be the norm, and I think it's a welcome development.
The fact is, despite all of our talk about globalization over the course of the last 25 years, today's financial crisis shows just how unprepared the world's governments were and still are, if you look what's going on in Europe today.
Oh, a wise guy, a head clunker, eh?
I came from back. Get out of here. He didn't do it.
And you did.
This was not simply another economic downturn. It was one that mutated into a perfect storm, because at its core was a banking crisis of unprecedented global reach.
It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
The great strength of the free market, which all of you know so well, is its ability to innovate. Its great weakness, however, is the tendency sometimes to take that innovation a bridge too far. Nowhere is that weakness more damaging than it would appears in the banking system, a system which depends entirely on the trust that we place in it. And that is why I believe we must develop a protocol, and it is the responsibility of the G20 to do so, on how failing banks can be unwound.
Mama.
Eh?
That agent. Did you notice him?
What?
There he sat, sly and smiling, planning to rob this poor old Jew Rothschild. And here I was, so innocent, a little child, a baby, in fact. And there was that fine old clock that his master had sent him to bargain for.
Yeah.
And when at last I let him have it for less money than it cost me, I could see in his eyes how pleased he was that he got the better of this little baby.
Sold it under cost?
A spat to catch a mackerel, Mama. He thinks he's so clever, and I'm so stupid. Always make them think they're clever.
Furthermore, we must accept that putting global principles and standards in place is but the first step. These are going to have to be continuously reviewed by an international body, and finally those new standards are going to have to be mandatory, and they are going to have to be fully enforced. And this is where the rubber hits the road.
The number one issue we have today in Canada, and have had for the past couple of years, without a shadow of a doubt, is the economy. But as I constantly remind Canadians, there isn't really a Canadian economy anymore. It is a global economy. And yes, the Canadian economy, so to speak, is doing better than many other countries. But the general trajectory of the Canadian economy, whether we're on the down or downhill as we were last year, or whether we're on the rebound as we are this year, is fundamentally determined by the state of the global economy. And that's what these meetings are all about, and that's why they are so critical. That's why it's so critical that we participate and play a major role, because Canadian jobs and Canadian futures are intimately linked to what goes on here. And quite frankly, everything that we do in our country to improve our country's position is ultimately to improve that position within the context of a global economy. And we cannot be effective at major economic matters any longer unless we work with our other economic partners around the world and work with them closely and intimately. That is essential. I know some people don't like it. It's a loss of national sovereignty, but it is a simple reality.
The G20 was a Canadian initiative, and I'm very glad to see how far it has progressed.
It came out of something you started, right? You started the L20, and it emerged from that.
Well, it was a Canadian initiative really all the way along, and I think that Canadian officials, Canadian think tanks played a huge role in building up the intellectual firepower.
I don't know. A proof is a proof. What kind of a proof? It's a proof. A proof is a proof, and when you have a good proof, it's because it's proven.